Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I am your host, Mike Luke, joined by the great William Bradallis. Hello, William. You look like you were just running around the neighborhood. Is this true?
I can neither confirm nor deny that Millie Doggy Brown ran away and I had to chase her around my neighborhood before she bit someone.
Well, everything is good, though, right? You got your guard dog back.
I did. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we care about. All right.
The other three are mad because they thought she went for a walk.
All right. We got a lot to get to this show. We're going to talk, obviously, a lot of Arizona basketball, some Arizona football, obviously. But first, let's start with some Arizona basketball. I haven't talked with you since the Clemson game. What were your thoughts overall on that game? And then we're going to talk about, obviously, all the latest movement going forward and whatnot.
Well, let me start with my big pet peeve. And there's this big movement out there that Tommy Lloyd made no adjustments, and that's false. The problem was Clemson out-adjusted, and they got out-coached. But remember, early on, they tried to establish Ballo. They couldn't get him the pass. They kept throwing him out of bounds. Then they started jacking up threes, but then they started attacking. But let's not pretend Clemson didn't go zone and pack the paint. And then my pet peeve now with Tommy Lloyd is he didn't tell his guys to quit shooting the three and find new ways to attack it.
Well, exactly.
But the point is they did adjust. Clemson just outcoached them. Now, so both can be true, that you can both get outcoached and still make adjustments. And we saw this happen to Miller a few times where he just ran out of answers.
Right.
Now, the fact that they were completely ill-prepared for those early slip screens or late slip screens, the fact that they could not press to save their life late, disappointing. But at the end of the day, if they shoot 30%, if they shoot 25% from behind the arc, they win that basketball game.
Yes.
And that's what's disappointing.
Yeah, see, my problem, though, is just because a team packs it in, you basically played into what they wanted you to do. And
Yep.
Brad Brownell talked about that after the game. Let's talk about a tongue twister, Brad Brownell. He talked about that after the game. He said, listen, we had no ability to be able to stop them one-on-one, so we needed them to just shoot threes. Just because a team says we're going to sag in and just shoot three, or hope you shoot threes, doesn't mean that you have to oblige and do it, William.
No, I mean, there are other ways to attack it, and they either didn't know how or just kept thinking, and this is, I think, a little bit of, especially with Caleb Lowe, I'm going to shoot myself out of the slump.
Right.
And at some point, you can't just be Jaden Bradley driving. And that's to be what the disappointment was. At some point, you have to stop. And I don't know what was said in the huddle. For all we know, Lloyd was like, quit shooting the three. Quit shooting it, and they kept doing it. Because we've seen kids go off script before, not just with Lloyd, but with plenty of other teams. But at the end of the day, the biggest disappointment was, as good as I think Tommy Lloyd is, this year's team was not good in close games. Mm-hmm. They were, I think, 1-5 in 2-possession games or less. And Lloyd still has to prove to me that he's I don't want to say a big game coach, because he's won, 2 Pac-12 championships. But he has to prove he's an NCAA tournament coach. And the fact that a guy who has been on the hot seat for a decade out-coached him, and I know Brownell is really well regarded as a tactician. But there's one guy on that team who starts for Arizona.
See,
and that's the disappointment, is they underperform by seed. And the fact is, even though they kept cutting that down to a 2-possession game, Clemson beat them and beat them pretty handily. And that was my problem.
Yes. And here's my question. Again, we're going to get to a lot of what's going on in the future, because there's obviously a lot of things going on. My question also, though, is with this, and I've been saying this for a while, I'm going to keep saying it. It didn't feel Tommy Lloyd, I think his next movement as a coach is to be able to start holding players accountable. And again, I don't know any better example to use than Kylan Boswell. That's really the best way that I can get it, is that Kylan Boswell was essentially guaranteed every single game that he was going to play 20 plus minutes. He was never going to be benched for play, off the court performance. And again, I think at some point you got to be able to embrace the tough love aspect, because listen, when when Kylan Boswell sat down at that blackjack table, he should have been benched for the next game, period.
Absolutely.
That was a player that had absolutely no concern about his coach disciplining him with playing time, and he was right.
I'll be honest, the fact that this kid, and again, I know I personally know people who've seen him out on the town in places he should not be, but based upon his age. Let's just say that. The fact that this kid, and again, I know I was a college student too. But you know what? If I had a test the next day, heck, if I had an intramural basketball game the next day, I wasn't out drinking all night, or I wasn't out partying, or I wasn't just staying out. At what point does that kid decide that his college basketball and his pro basketball future is more important than being a quote unquote college student?
Wait a second. Hold on a second. We might have breaking news. Is Bobby Robbins out? Can somebody confirm this? Where this stuff always happens right when we're on air. Because that obviously is that will change the course of the show a little bit if Bobby Robbins is out. If somebody else could confirm that would be awesome. Let's see here. Bobby Robbins out? Well, if somebody could confirm that, or I've just messaged.
I didn't see anything in my top 15 Twitter feeds. So
all right. So again, we will. It's not publicly announced yet. Okay. Well, we will definitely be talking about that later on. Then, when that does come to fruition. Okay, but let's talk now a little bit about Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley, this has to be Jaden Bradley's team at the point guard spot going forward, period. Jaden Bradley did things by the book. He was a good teammate. He was better, let's be honest. He was significantly better than Kylan Boswell on both sides of the court. And you saw at the end that he had the ability to take over a game in big moments in a way that Boswell just didn't. It's just a massive difference when it comes to both of those players. He needs to be the guy going into Big 12 play.
I think we could argue that you can make an argument that the last couple games, Jaden Bradley was the best player on the team.
Right.
That play he made late, and I know the game was probably wrapped up, but that play he made on Deron Holmes just kind of summed it up. Right. Yeah. I mean, again, and I have been an admitted Jaden Bradley fanboy the whole time. Right. The fact that this wasn't his team February 1st, it's still a little baffling, and I get it. Luke had to do some of the same things, massaging egos. And my guess is Tommy Lloyd felt without Boswell they couldn't win, but I think they could have. They needed Caleb Love. I mean, and that's to me more than Boswell. Love is the reason they lost that game, because he couldn't shoot and they needed him. Not that he blew the game, because guys are going to have bad shooting nights, but because he was so important. But Jaden Bradley made this team run better.
Yes.
If you look at the metrics, and I'm not a huge analytics guy, but weren't they like plus 20 something with him on the floor and like plus 2 with
they were one of the best teams in the country with Jaden Bradley on the court, and they were not one of the best teams with Kylan Boswell. And a big part of the reason was with Kylan Boswell is that you didn't have to defend Kylan Boswell, and I think a lot of it too is that Kylan Boswell I don't think took this season as seriously as he needed to, where Jaden Bradley did.
Well, here's the difference. When Kylan Boswell misses his first 3 shots, he's done.
Right.
He's done on all ends of the floor. When Jaden Bradley couldn't shoot, and there were nights he couldn't shoot, and he knew it, what did he do? Drive and dish, play defense, rebound. Same thing to a lesser extent with KJ Lewis. There were nights where KJ Lewis, in his head, thought he was the greatest shot maker in the world. And there were other nights, sometimes he wasn't those nights, and there were other nights he knew he didn't have it. So what did he do? Rebound, D, get up in his guy's grill. Try to draw contact and get to the hoop. And that's something that really good basketball players, not necessarily the most talented basketball players, but really good basketball players do.
Right.
They figure out what's not working.
All right, Brad, we got to move. We got to change topics here. Bobby Robbins is out. He will finish out his term. There is something, listen, when it comes to Bobby Robbins, there's this. He should be out. You can't just keep throwing people under the bus for what you did. And it was, quite frankly, it was malfeasance in how he operated this university.
Or just move someone to a different department after you tell everyone she was fired.
Yes, exactly. He did. Now, listen, he did some good things. He made my life a lot easier when it comes to sports because he actually valued sports. But at the same time, this is also a dude who, let's be honest here, he should have been out for a variety of different reasons. And I think the governor coming down on him in the manner in which she did, I think certainly expedited that. But he needed to be out. The financial mismanagement of this university, from the online school to essentially allowing anybody and everybody in that, from that couldn't get into UC Davis and giving them financial aid here, he had to be out. This was something that had to have been done. And I'm glad he's out because honestly, as much as I like for what he did with sports, he was negligent when it came to running this university, period.
Yeah, he was a better athletic director than he was a school president.
Yes.
And now I will still say this, even with a lot of his issues, he may still have been better than the previous president, who had some other ethical things that I thought she did as well. But yeah, Arizona probably need to turn the page. And now hopefully the search values, again, athletics, because I think that's an important thing to this Arizona community. I think it's very important to the Tucson community. And for the most part, the vast majority of Arizona's presidents in my lifetime have been pretty high on athletics. There have been some exceptions. So I'm hoping that, Arizona continues with one who at least understands their importance to the community. Because frankly, as much as we like to make fun of our neighbors to the north and how, theirs does not, it's not as important to the Phoenix community that college athletics,
Right.
except in pockets. I mean, there are people who are diehards. GCU has filled a void, but that's a pro sports town. Tucson is not. Tucson puts a lot, frankly, Tucson has put so much of its identity on Lute Olson that in many ways, Lute Olson put Tucson on the map. So I think, it's a very important that Arizona finds someone who at least understands their importance if they're not a flat out booster of athletics.
My problem too with Robbins was listen, with especially too when he when Dave Hickey was let go, he said that they needed the financials of the athletic department needed to be cleaned up. Bobby Robbins knew everything that was going on in the financial realm of the athletic department. And not only did he know everything that was going on, he took pride in knowing that. And again, this was a guy you could say that micromanaged things, and you could say, well, deservedly so. But at the end of the day, this was a dude that had his tentacles in everything. So when he's talking about how, I didn't know what happened or this or that, and we had to move on to a different athletic director, no. This guy threw anybody and everybody under the bus that he could. And again, he did some good things, especially on the athletic front, but this was a guy that needed to go. The transparency, as DK says right here, the transparency, Robbins is the farthest thing from transparency there is. And that is to put it mildly, Brad.
Yeah, and again, I know you had a really good relationship with Dave Hickey, and I know some people who absolutely adored him in that athletic department. I know people who did not and thought he wasn't doing a good job. But the fact is, I think in many ways, Hickey was brought in, whether he knew it or not, and I happen to think not, to be pushed around a little bit by Robbins, because Robbins did want his tentacles and everything.
Right.
So yes, the fact is, I think you could have maybe made a case to let Hickey go based upon things. But that being said, a lot of I think the reasons that Robbins got rid of him were twofold. One, Robbins was covering his own butt. And two, I think Hickey exerted a little more authority at the end than Robbins wanted him to. I think in many ways, the Brent Brennan hire,
that was a Dave Hickey.
That was all Dave Hickey. And I think Dave Hickey may have known doing that I'm going to leave them with the guy I think is the best guy. And if that costs me my job, so be it.
Right.
So that being said, I really do like the new athletic director here. Great things already. And yeah, so again, it'll be interesting to see what Arizona's next move is, because I think you need to find someone who is less involved than Dr. Robbins, but more involved than Dr. Crow.
Well, right. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see what that next move is, and this is where it makes me a little uncomfortable when it comes to the university presidents, because you get a lot of there are university presidents because they set the tone. There are university presidents that do not like sports, or they put up with sports. Crow is the epitome of that. Michael Crow, I don't think cares at all about sports. That's not his thing. I think that he looks at sports as something that's kind of a peripheral thing and you could make the case that that certainly is. But in Tucson, sports is a massive deal at the University of Arizona. So when Michael Crow goes out and when Michael Crow says he essentially doesn't know what streaming is as they're going through this entire network deal, that's a problem. But Robbins obviously really liked sports. And you could look by the hires. He liked being there. But also, I think the thing about him, though, is that he just didn't. The other things outweighed what he did. I mean, this was malfeasance at the highest order for the university. And I think he thought for the longest time he'd be able to get away with this, but the governor wasn't going to let him.
No, and I think he lost, I think people maybe he counted on being allies at the Board of Regents suddenly weren't. I know one of his big supporters took a leave of absence, if I'm not mistaken. I won't pretend to know all the ins and outs of the Board of Regents. I think if you want to use the sports analogy, Robbins was Jimmy Johnson, or not Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones with a little more corruption on the side. And I don't want to say corruption like he was pocketing the money, but again, when you say you terminated someone and then she's working in a different department for the same amount of money, that's shady.
That's an issue.
Yeah. Again, when you basically overstep your bounds, and we've seen, again, you were using the sports analogy, Jerry Jones likes to be GM. Right. And maybe there's a reason the Cowboys have not won since I was a student at the University of Arizona. Whereas you can have other owners who are super involved, but don't make decisions. And I'll point out again, the Chiefs, Jeffrey Lurie at the Eagles is a great owner who, again, knows everything that's going on. But other than maybe firing a coach here or there, doesn't make huge decisions. And that's why those are successful franchises. So yeah, you have to find someone who's a little more hands-on than, say, the Bears ownership.
Right.
But it's not Jerry. And that's what you need, the equivalent of your president. You need a president who respects sports, understands sports, can use sports to market their university, which Arizona has done very well. But at the same time, doesn't want to play athletic director. I
also think he did a pretty good job of being able to navigate the TV deal that was the Big 12. Because again, I think if there was another Michael Crow in here, like if there was a Michael Crow here at the U of A, I wouldn't really be surprised at all if somehow they tried to cobble something together where you're taking pennies on the dollar and you essentially stay as like a Pac-6 or something like that. I think he understood the big placement that was where Arizona needed to go as things are moving on. But again, when you falter in so many key areas, it's hard to really stick up for you at that point.
Well, I think what Robbins also did is he positioned Arizona as the leader of the four. And even though Colorado made the jump first, he recognized quickly that the Big 12 was putting a value on basketball.
Right.
I've heard behind the scenes that he really positioned Arizona, and it's a little ironic considering how the teams are doing this season, that Arizona could fill a void by Oklahoma softball and Texas baseball.
Right.
That Arizona women's basketball, which has a really pretty rabid fan base, could help replace the Texas and OU because they draw very well for women's sports. And frankly, that Arizona, and again, I don't know the recent, I know 5-6 years ago, Arizona's streaming numbers dwarf just about everyone else in the Pac-12 across the board. Now, sometimes we're talking tens of thousands of people watching a baseball game, but that's compared to hundreds for, a Washington State baseball game.
Right.
But Arizona streams, and more Arizona fans stream games than Phoenix and ASU fans. So that was something that he was able to market behind the scenes to the Big 12, who's not just looking at TV deals, but we're looking at streaming. And we're looking at college basketball paying more bills than they have in the past. And he did that very well. So Arizona really became a jewel for the Big 12, where conventional wisdom said, no, we want Denver market. We want the Phoenix market.
All right, now it's time for the BetMGM Sportsbook app. Let's say you're like William Brad Allis, or you're like me, and you're like, man, I'm looking at going into the big, I'm going to look in, going into the Big 12, and I want to bet on Arizona. Sign up for the BetMGM sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app for at least $10. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if the bet loses. Check out the show notes for full details, and let's hear from the great Shane Diefenbach with the disclaimer.
Bonus bets expire in 7 days. One new customer offer only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, North Carolina, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
All right, Brad. It's also time for our BetMGM parlay. Who do you got winning the national championship? I got UConn. Who do you have? And I got UConn playing Purdue.
I got UConn. UConn's the only of my final four teams I have left. I came out of bracket retirement and did not do well. Let's just say that. I picked all the wrong, but yeah, I'm leaning to. I don't love this Purdue team still, but at some point, NC State's just got to run out of gas. And I thought it was going to be 4 games ago. So that shows you again how much I know. And that's ironic that Kevin Keats was going to be fired and now is probably going to sign a really nice extension. And congrats to him, because that team's fun to watch. The big guy in the middle might go on to my all rotund team, along with Khalid El-Amin, Demeet Hook, Robert Traylor, Demetrius Hill. Love that guy. And I think we got to put the big O Oliver Miller on that team as well.
Right. All right. Now here's where
he keeps it up, Kyle Boswell.
All right. Yes. Right. All right. Exactly. All right. So here's where I'm at. President Robbins is out as the University of Arizona president. He's going to finish out his term. He was very good for me when it came to sports because he understood the value that was sports for the University of Arizona. He was firmly involved when it came to football. He was firmly involved when it came to basketball. The problem, though, as the university president, though, is that he screwed up way too many things financially, obviously from the online school to allowing kids in from UC Davis that otherwise probably wouldn't have been here and giving them financial aid. And then on top of that, also, once all of this hit the fan, essentially throwing anybody and everybody under the bus that he could, rearranging people's job titles without any kind of real problem behind it. And then on top of that, you basically get rid of the athletic director because you say that, you didn't know what was going on in the athletic department from a financial perspective. You clearly did. Again, he was good for sports, President Robbins, but this was somebody that I think has kind of run his course, and I'm glad that he's out because I don't know that he was necessarily befitting of a University of Arizona president.
I think that's fair. Like I said, he did some good things, boosting their academic standards or status, which had dropped under the previous president, with some other things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, just too many mistakes and how you handle the mistakes instead of coming out in front of it, taking some blame. Me culpas go a long way sometimes into deflecting blame better and hiding it, and he just chose not to do it that way.
Yeah, and again, I think when the governor got involved, I think that's when you knew too that this thing was really going to kind of end. End for him, because the governor getting involved was a massive problem. Because then the Arizona Board of Regents essentially then was kind of neutered to a certain degree. Now, the governor can't technically, from my understanding, get rid of or can't make this hire or this firing. But what the governor can do is that the governor can come in and make things difficult for people with said projects. There's ways around it. And when people from the ABOR started stepping down from their positions or being reassigned, I think you knew at some point that this thing was probably going to be over for Bobby Robbins. And that's certainly what happened. It also goes to show you too, in this day and age, a lot of times I think people think they're being sneaky by, I'll get rid of this person or I'll get rid of this person, and thinking that nobody will really notice. But when in actuality, they do notice these things. And I think that's what happened. I think the city is pretty much out on him, to be honest with you.
I don't know how much the city at large cares or knows much about him. I think the minute they saw the 240 million or whatever the actual number is, without even understanding what it meant, they were probably out on him. Right. I think there's a segment of sports fans who were all in on him because he cared about sports. And frankly, there's a segment of sports fans who didn't like Sumlin, who didn't like how Fish left, who didn't necessarily like how the Lloyd hire went down. Although, again, in hindsight, think it's a great move, who were out on him a long time ago. And I think, again, once the governor mentioned him, I mean, when was the last time a governor mentioned a university president other than at a picture thing? It was over.
And it wasn't even so much the governor mentioning him. It was how far she went.
Oh, yeah.
It was how far she went, because she said multiple times, I don't really have a reason to trust you, or something to that I don't really have a reason to trust you. And when the governor starts putting that kind of stuff out, you're in a lot of trouble. And she was pretty much in there. Now, listen, I don't buy this. I love KB Thiel. I don't like how he handled hiring Lloyd and sneaky talking to coaches month before firing someone. Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, the Sean Miller thing, in my opinion, that thing had run its course. He got paid all of his money. You knew that you wanted to get Lloyd. I have no problem with that, to be honest with you.
The two things I think with his big power moves was timing of firings. Both Miller and Rich Rod were fired well after the season was over. If I remember, I mean, it was like mid-January when wasn't Rich Rod fired like the week of the second signing day? It wasn't like right after the bowl game you fired him. And Miller, it wasn't like right after the Pac-12 tournament, or they fired him. What wasn't it after the NCAA tournament?
Yeah,
or during the middle of it? I can't remember now. It all blurs. But those were curious. So, and again, in many ways, you wonder how much of how much did he have? And again, every athletic director worth their salt knows what's out there.
Right.
They don't talk to coaches, but they talk to agents. So, one reason, Byrne made the move on Stoops when he did was so he could have more of these conversations. But everyone has a list, and, obviously, and again, it's revisionist history. I loved the Sumlin hire at the time.
Everybody did.
Because I thought you were going to get the Kevin Sumlin revenge tour, not the Kevin Sumlin, I got $7 million in the bank and I don't give a, So there you go.
Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of where it's at. All right. Now the AZ, now you guys, this is why we rely on all of you. Now with the, let's see here, Mr. Tyler Warden, the ABOR is going to be obviously very, very involved in this. And I think that's something that you got to keep in mind. My biggest concern with all of this, though, again, is getting a Michael Crow in here where you're like, all right, this guy's just going to put up with sports, because Arizona, I think. But I will say this: Arizona's done a pretty good job. Tommy Lloyd's locked in. There's really nothing. You can say that he's locked in long term. He's got a lot. He's going to be paid a lot of money, and that I think is a good thing. Obviously Brent Brennan's locked in here as well, so that's a good thing as well.
And you also have an AD who's known for her budget magic, for raising funds. Because remember, we're not far removed from Arizona had a self-sufficient athletic department forever.
Right.
And again, some of that was bad facilities. I get it. But Jim Livengood ran one that broke even or even made a slight profit.
Right.
Again, the whole model has changed. We get it with NIL, with the arms race for facilities. But yes, so in many ways, I think if, the new AD and the new administration can continue to be as self-sufficient as you can, then the athletic department can be as big as it wants to. Once you get into needing to borrow money or to dip, I know there's a student fee, or is there still a student fee for athletics, but it's minimal. At least it was. I don't know what it is now, but once you get beyond that, then yes, then the president's going to matter a lot more.
Yeah, and I think with one thing that Arizona fans, I think, have found out over this time too as well, is that if you have a really good coach in play, no matter what Jed Fish said, there's ways to pay them. Look at Tommy Lloyd. Tommy Lloyd is going to be one of the 7 or 8 highest paid coaches in all of college basketball. There are ways to be able to pay these people no matter what, because again, they are donor and they are booster based. I also
Jed was going to get his bump.
What's that?
Jed
was
gonna
good. Yeah, but
and
see,
there was even a counter offer right before he left.
that was
from my
crap.
understanding.
You know, that was Jed lying. That was just what it is. I mean, there's no reason that they could have paid Tommy Lloyd the kind of money they did and they weren't able to get it to Jed Fish. He knew that. He's kind of strung some people along, and I think that's where that's at. Andy Bryant, I disagree with you a little bit. The great Andy Bryant. I 1000% wanted to get Tommy Lloyd locked up as long-term as possible, as quickly as possible, because if he were to ever hit the market, he would be out of a job for about 3 minutes. I mean, we know you've got a young coach there, and clearly he's still got some stuff to learn, but this is somebody that I'll take my chances with learning over the next 20 years as opposed to the devil I don't know.
Well, and again, the only knock, and it's a big one, is his tournament performance.
For sure.
Which,
no doubt.
But there's also a lot of coaches who got paid because they got one term. Again, you want Kevin Keats or do you want Tommy Lloyd?
Right.
I mean, what Keats has done this run, remarkable, right? Kevin Keats has been a treading water coach for, Brad Brownell.
Right.
He's
made 4 NCAA tournaments in 14 years.
Yeah. He's a lot like another guy Arizona fans hate, Seth Greenberg, who a lot of people think is a tactician. Seth Greenberg went 17-14 every year. Brad Brownell goes 20-14 every year. He's really, really good tactician, but there's more to a program than that.
Yeah.
It's recruiting, it's building, it's connections. I believe, and again, you can look at other coaches who did not do well early in the tournament and then had great success later on, or vice versa. Look at Miller. Miller went 11-3 in the NCAA tournament at Arizona. I think he was something like 17-5 or something gaudy, 17-6.
But he also missed the tournament 5 out of 12 years or whatever. So
and went what, 0-4 his last 3 years?
Yeah.
And again, everyone's like, well, Tommy inherited, but yeah. But guess what Luke did after the 1988 Final Four?
Right.
A couple Sweet 16s, a couple first-round flameouts, and a second-round loss, and then went back to a Final Four. But the fact is, guys have to learn to adjust because the tournament does change from time to time. So I'm not as worried about Tommy Lloyd. I'd be much more worried if Tommy Lloyd was going 20-9 and sneaking into the tournament and then, going to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, see, that's also where I'm at when it comes to this with Tommy Lloyd. I'm going to take the devil that I know, because here's what I always ask people as well. Who are the people in college basketball that you'd clearly rather have for the next 10 years running your program? And you can maybe get a couple, but you're not going to get many. And that's why if you have somebody like that, you lock them up, and you lock them up long term. Plus, I think he's good for the community, as is Circle K. William Brad Allis. When was the last time you went to Circle K? Don't lie.
Yeah, like 2 days ago.
Do you think Tommy Lloyd's part of the inner circle?
Tommy Lloyd probably runs the inner circle.
I believe Tommy Lloyd does as well. Join the inner circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. Brad, what did you get when you were last at Circle K?
What I always get this time of year. A Gatorade and a Power Bar for Tyler for baseball.
There you go. And
that's it. You don't have to ask me when the last time. I'm going to Circle K almost every day because it's on the way to Curtis Park, where my son plays baseball, and I'm running the league, and we're there every day. So
I referee games at I've refereed many games at the Sporting Chance there.
My daughter has played many volleyball games at Sporting Chance. So I'm going to be living in that area because she's also playing volleyball this season. So my inner circle points, it's going to look like Bobby Robbins dead.
Right. Yeah. And OGs. All right. Check it out. OGs, all kinds of good stuff. It's Gummy Madness season. Follow along as 8 competing dispensaries put gummy versus gummy against each other each week in a bracket to determine a champion. Vote for your favorite gummy as the winner will receive a BOGO offer. Follow along to see who wins. To learn more about OG's gummies and where you can find them, head on over to ogsbrands.com. Must be 21 years or up to enjoy responsibly. Check out OG's. You will thank me later. And again, OG's, all kinds of really good stuff. Now, listen, Cedric Dempsey was the best. That is the gold standard for all athletic directors. He was absolutely amazing. See, Andy, though, and I get what you're saying, but listen, we already know at this stage that Tommy has shown that he can recruit. He's got a top 5 class coming in. I think that was kind of the last question. And yeah, he's got to be able to perform in the Big 12. But when you've got somebody there that more likely than not is that dude for the next 20 years, I think you've got to pay him because, again, we've seen, remember how scary that time was, right, when that loot transition was occurring, where you had where you had KO and then you had Pennell and then you were worried about, oh man.
Or how about KO getting the job and then Lou firing?
Yeah, I mean, Lute literally came back just to fire him and get rid of him. And then we were talking about Jim Boylan or people like that. This is the dude. I think you got to go all in on that one.
I mean, yeah, I think TLN makes a good point about Calipari, but Calipari now has 20-year track record of underperforming.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was awful. This year, it wasn't even that they only went to the Sweet 16. It's how they lost in the Sweet 16.
Right.
I don't have a problem losing to Houston because I think that Houston team was as good as any 3 seed. So, yes, I want to see more. But the NCAA is such a crapshoot. And even as much as I thought Arizona got outcoached, again, they shoot 25% from behind the arc, and they're probably winning that basketball game.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not worried yet. Now, talk to me in 3 years when they haven't gotten past the Sweet 16. And, yeah, I'm going to change my tune. But again, I lived through a lot of first-round losses to a lot of double-digit seeds with Lute Olson, and also got to see him cut down the nets. So I might be patient. I'm also an old man. So
yeah, you are an old man. Now with let's talk about some things that Arizona basketball needs. And again, so we've talked about we'll have a lot more on this tomorrow, obviously. But we talked obviously about the president being out. Now, the next thing, where is what Arizona needs for their roster, for next year? A big thing they're going to need, and I can guarantee you this is going to be a huge priority in the portal, is they are going to look for a very athletic, strong 4-man. Going into the Big 12, that is a big, big aspect of Big 12 basketball play is across the board. Guys that are 6'7", 220, 6'6", 215, 6'8", 235. Arizona is going to be returning Mount Krivas, Dylan Anderson, and Henry Vasar. Do with that what you will, but you've got to have an athletic 4-man. That is going to be Arizona's top priority in the portal. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, because right now it's going to be Carter Bryant. And while I love Carter Bryant, he's more natural. He's more naturally a 3, and he's going up against some big, strong men.
Right.
And again, there's a big difference between being a really athletic, strong 18-year-old and being a really strong 22-year-old. You get some man strength when you hit those early 20s.
Right.
So, yeah, I think they need that. They may need a big wing because although I really like I don't even know how to pronounce the name. Is it Josan?
Josan Sainon.
I really like the Jamari. Those guys aren't 6'6", 6'7". Right. They're more in the 6'3", 6'4" range. The other thing I would like to add personally is a veteran point guard. Again, I don't know what's going on with Boswell. I've heard rumblings he may come back. If he's gone, although I like Bradley, I'd really like to go find a mid-major guy who wants to be part of something, because I don't know if I'm ready to turn it over to Conrad Martinez. I like some of the things.
No, you can't go into the season. You can't go into the season with Conrad Martinez as your back.
Go get me a guy who played. Go get me what we all thought TJ McConnell was going to be and not what he was.
Right.
And that's a steady coach's kid from like a mid-major who can come in and give you that 12 to 15 minutes to get either Bradley a break or Bradley off the ball, just because, again, I think teams are going to pressure. Another veteran guy, even if it's not a veteran guy who's made a deep tournament run, but a guy who's played 70 college basketball games and has had the ball in his hands, but is now ready to just see a different...
PJ Haggerty is somebody we're going to talk about more tomorrow. Do you know anything about him, Brad?
I'm not real familiar with PJ Haggerty, no.
All right, a kid that averaged 20 points per game at Tulsa, was originally at TCU, 6'3" guy.
Let me guess, if he was at Tulsa at TCU, uber athletic?
Yeah, I mean, can put...
Because that's what those guys are.
And he can put the ball in the hoop. And so here's where I think though. And again, Arizona, I think, is going to be better equipped with this. Jaden Bradley needs to start. That was a big, big dub for Mr. William Brad Alice, because, again, William called that before the season. William, you will always spike the football on this. Is this understood?
The two I think I was right on, Bradley and Krivas, because I had some doubts about other guys. But yeah, I'll put that feather in my cap, and we can totally ignore when I told you that Kashad Johnson is going to get 10 minutes a night at the 3.
Right. Yeah. All right. It doesn't matter either way. The Jaden Bradley one is a big victory for Mr. William Brad Ellis. So you got Jaden Bradley then at the point. You got KJ Lewis. That's one. Those guys are built for Big 12 play. Those are the type of dudes that you need.
And my guess is you're going 3-guard lineup with maybe the better of the 2 freshmen. I don't know who that is.
Right.
As the other unless you get that pure wing, because right now they don't have the pure wing unless Bryant's ready. But again, I see Bryant probably get more minutes at the 4 just because I think it's going to be a little bit easier transition, even though he might get beat up a little.
All right, now the Gila River Resorts and Casinos, my friend. Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Brad, have you seen the Gila River Resorts and Casinos?
I have.
All right, it's very, very cool. I've driven by it many times. I like the little blue wave, as you all know about. You do you at the Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more details. An authentic and immersive experience. Head to Gila River Resorts and Casinos and let them show you what next level fun is all about. The Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Again, you can go there, have some fun. It's a really nice spot. All kinds of really, really good stuff. Again, the Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Now, Krisa, Jervis Williams, the great Jervis Williams, very funny. Kirk Krisa has entered the transfer portal. No to Kirk.
I said veteran point guard who is a coach's kid.
Yes.
I want a smart, heady backup point guard.
I do not want Kirk Krisa anywhere near this program. Kirk Krisa, honestly, is one of my least favorite players to ever come through here.
I don't know if he's that far down the list, but he's certainly nowhere near my fondness.
He's not on your Mount Rushmore.
No, definitely not.
And I would take, if Frankie Collins wanted to come in and be a backup here at the U of A, bring him. I would take Frankie Collins all day as a backup. He's one of the better backups in the entire, or he'd be one of the better backups.
Yeah, he'd be great spark off the bench that I thought, they should have tried to make Boswell.
Right. Now, back to Boswell for a second. If Boswell comes back, this to me has to be kind of a Kirk Krisa situation from last year. You bring back Boswell and you tell him, listen, you're not starting. You can come off the bench. That ship to me has sailed. And one thing that's also kind of frustrating, Brad, you and I grew up. Well, me especially. You're significantly older than me, about 25 years old. But I grew up with when you knew that Arizona point guard play was going to be one of the preeminent positions in all of college basketball. What is wild to me is you've had 3 straight years of point guards that can't get in the lane, that can't get to the free throw line. Now, Jaden Bradley can, but you've got Boswell averaged one free throw per game. That is wild, William Brad Ellis.
No, what's even more staggering is really since that shot hit the back iron in 2003.
Yeah.
Arizona's had one NBA point guard.
And it's somebody that we had no idea that was
transfer from Duquesne.
Right.
The other thing I think that has been staggering is how many guys have shown flashes their first year and got no better. Shakur, Nick Wise, who you can make an argument top 3 or 4 in that group.
Oh, I think Nick Wise is probably one of the 3 best point guard. Oh, hey, one point guard that did make the NBA that we're not giving a little credit to, Kadeem Allen.
Was he a point guard? I know. Again, Shakur made the NBA for an hour.
Shakur sucked.
Because he was the same guy as the first. Again, we saw glimpses from Krisa and got no better, and we saw glimpses from Boswell. And you can argue he regressed. Because, again, I will go to my grave saying Boswell should have played against Princeton more.
Right.
So that's, to me, a big problem. You've tried to bring in, again, I'm really bad with names today. But, the kid from Georgetown was fine.
James Akinjo.
Yeah, he was fine for what he was, but they could have done better. Mark Lyons was fine for what he was.
I liked Mark Lyons. I thought Mark Lyons got beat up too much. I like Mark Lyons. Mark Lyons on this team would have been great.
Sometimes. But the fact is, you shouldn't be in this position when you're Arizona of saying, if we can get some point guard play. No, You're Arizona. But the fact of the matter is, the days of being point guard you are long back. You're wing forward you, and you have been since Sean Elliott.
Right. Now, Jacob, do we have Jacob? What events do we have going on for PHNX? I know there's a lot of many events coming on. Why don't we throw something up here? All kinds of good stuff, if I'm not mistaken. But I think you're gonna have something. All right. Oh, the Mike Bibby. Oh, the collection, the Mike Bibby. You got to go check this out. The Tourney Championship Weekend, PHNX watch parties, April 5th from 6 p.m. and April 7th at 2 p.m. at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Go see the player that I consider the best player that I've ever seen at the University of Arizona, Mike Bibby. They were all very, very good. Go check it out. Mike Bibby. Very, very good stuff. Now,
that guy was a point guard, I think.
Mike Bibby was a point guard, yes. Joson Sainon, he's more, go look at Jacoby Walter from Baylor. That's who I think the comparison is. Go back and look at him. You will thank me later on this. All right, we're going to have a ton of shorts and clips coming out talking about all of this. I've got to get some information here because, again, it's difficult when we're on air. But, Mr. William Brad Allis, we very much appreciate your time as always.
I'll see you when I see you.
All right. I'll be back with you tomorrow, but you'll be hearing from me before then. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.